In the classification of people, I divided humanity into 5 categories: ignorant people, worldly people, mortals, sages, and celestials. This classification is based on the varying degrees to which instinct, desire, emotion, reason, and spirituality dominate human nature. For instance, those driven by instinct are ignorant people, those driven by desire are worldly people, those driven by emotion are mortals, those driven by reason are sages, and those driven by spirituality are celestials. This is a broad and absolute categorization. Celestials can be further classified into ghost celestials, human celestials, land celestials, deity celestials, and super celestials. In Revelation chapter, Article 68, saints are discussed, and they belong to the celestial category. Based on the depth of their alignment with the Tao, celestials can be subdivided into ultimate beings, true beings, celestial beings, divine beings, and heavenly beings. If categorized by levels, humanity can be divided into 3 tiers. Lower level, ignorant people, worldly people, and mortals; middle level, sages; upper level, saints, including ultimate beings, true beings, celestial beings, divine beings, and heavenly beings. Among these, celestials only include human celestials and land celestials. Deity celestials and super celestials no longer belong to the human realm, while ghost celestials are also outside humanity. The purpose of classifying people is not to toy with concepts but to help us determine our position among humanity and identify the direction and goal of our progress. Without classification, it becomes difficult to establish a reference point or coordinate system for our lives. Without it, life becomes a tangled mess, and we may go through life without ever understanding what it is truly about. We know that stones, for example, can be categorized into diamonds, rubies, sapphires, cat's eyes, topazes, spinels, aquamarines, zircons, emeralds, tourmalines, garnets, jadites, opals, moonstones, sunstones, turquoise, malachites, agates, pebbles, bluestones, flint, and so on. Each type of stone has its own unique characteristics. Similarly, people can be categorized into heavenly beings, divine beings, celestials, true beings, perfected beings, saints, mortals, worldly people, and ignorant people, based on their unique traits. A sage is someone who has transcended the constraints of instinct, desire, and emotion to enter a life of reason, but they still fall short of a life of spirituality. Sages remain unclear about whether existence precedes consciousness or vice versa. They readily accept scientific knowledge, logical reasoning, empirically proven facts, and the wisdom distilled from humanity's millennia of experience. However, when it comes to transcending conventional thinking, sages are often at a loss, bewildered, and even resistant. It is akin to a scale capable of measuring up to 100 kilograms. It works seamlessly within this range but becomes useless when the weight exceeds its capacity. Recently, a friend visited my home to swim but almost drowned. He could only swim 5 meters, and beyond that, he started floundering in place. Fortunately, someone was there to rescue him, otherwise, the consequences could have been dire. The development of Life Achanuan vividly illustrates this phenomenon. Many people are initially enthusiastic and actively participate, but as the path deepens, they find it difficult to keep up. They start to feel that certain aspects are unsuitable or problematic, attempting to explain things or draw boundaries based on their rational thinking as sages. They try to impose limits on the boundless mysteries of the universe using simple formulas or laws, which is both distressing and regrettable. Everything has limits. Pots, pans, trucks, and computers have their capacities, even springs have an elastic limit. The Earth's mass and speed must remain within limits to maintain balance and order. The problem is, human thought is limitless. Left to themselves, people may never break free from rigid thinking. But with guidance, they can transcend conventional thinking and enter a vast new dimension. Unfortunately, few people are humble enough to accept such guidance, while many remain stubbornly attached to their views. There are 80 billion celestial islands in the celestial islands continent waiting for people to inhabit, yet too few are able to meet the standards required. Newton discovered 3 threshold cosmic velocities, 7.9 km per second, 11.2 km per second, and 16.7 km per second. If we assume that 7.9 km per second is the universal principle, we will never escape Earth's gravitational pull. If we assume that 11.2 km per second is the universal principle, we will never break free from the solar system's control. If we assume that Einstein's principle of the speed of light applies to all matter, including non-material, then we are doomed to be forever bound to Earth, trapped in a cycle of conflict over food, clothing, shelter, and transportation. Sages are only one step away from truth. They are like someone hanging onto a withered vine over a cliff, waiting for rescue. As Buddha said, let go, and they will step into the ranks of saints. But if they refuse to let go, they will perish along with the vine. If sages do not abandon their entire way of thinking and empty their minds, they will remain sages forever. So, what exactly is the state of sages? See Revelation chapter, Article 70. Sages, Part 2. Xiefeng. Sages are the backbone of human civilization and society. They are the guardians of morality, the maintainers of harmony and order, the defenders of truth, and the disseminators of saintly wisdom. Sages are precious gifts bestowed upon humanity by nature, like lingzhi mushrooms, peonies, gemstones, and sparks of fire. The origins of sages are twofold. First, they descend from the thousand-year world. Second, they emerge through the practice and refinement of noble individuals. In other words, some sages are born with these qualities, while others are cultivated through the self-discipline and refinement of noble individuals following the teachings of saints. Sages possess the following qualities. Rationality. They think critically and do not blindly follow others. They maintain moderation in all things, avoiding extremes. They reason through matters rather than engaging in irrational disputes. They are loyal and trustworthy, never fickle or inconsistent. Humility. Recognizing their own insignificance and limitations, they revere heaven and respect the divine. Acknowledging their own ignorance, they seek the guidance of saints. Understanding their weakness, they rely on the collective strength of the masses. Knowing their abilities are limited, they never mock ordinary people. Simplicity. Those who crave dominance and seek to make waves are not sages. Those who desire sudden wealth are not sages. Those who seek overnight fame are not sages. Those who oppose the government are not sages. Those who deliberately place themselves at the center of controversies are not sages. Those who denounce their ancestors or curse their heritage are not sages. Those who incite chaos are not sages. Those who are filled with hatred and seek revenge are not sages. Harmony. Being with sages makes life feel beautiful and hopeful. Being with sages brings a sense of security and inner peace. Being with sages fosters boundless joy, free from worries. Being with sages sharpens one's thinking, making challenges easier to overcome. Willingness to help. Sages take joy in assisting others. As long as their actions do not harm nature, life, society, or the interests of others, sages gladly do good within their abilities. They impose no conditions, expect no favors in return, and seek no repayment. Frugality. Those who try to please everyone and be all things to all people are not sages. Those who seek novelty and luxury, and indulge in extravagance, are not sages. Those who frequently visit lavish mansions or entertainment districts are not sages. Those who flaunt their wealth and provoke envy are not sages. Those who decorate their homes like palaces or brothels are not sages. Those who complicate simple matters unnecessarily are not sages. Diligence. Sages are diligent because every grain of rice represents hard-earned labor. Sages are diligent because one must give before one can receive. Sages are diligent because, just as the sun and moon never cease their motion, life must remain in constant activity. Sages are diligent because heaven helps those who help themselves, while laziness leads to greed, ignorance, selfishness, and poverty. Resilience. Sages are like grass that survives after being trampled, grazed upon, or swept by floods. They persist as long as there is the slightest chance of life. Sages are like Robinson Crusoe stranded on a deserted island. They hold on to hope and never despair. Sages are like camels trudging through a barren desert. They press on as long as they have even a shred of energy left. Sages are like wild animals, injured and abandoned without the care of their kind. So long as they have breath, they rise again. I sing praises to sages, admire sages, yearn for sages, and seek out sages. Zhuge Liang once prophesied, sages will not remain in the wilderness, the world will unite as one family. Life Achanuan must gather sages who are now scattered across the wilderness, remote villages, humble streets, and modest dwellings, bringing them together as one. Through the collective power of sages, humanity will be led to depart from Egypt and journey toward the land, flowing with milk and honey. Moreover, I will treat sages as dazzling pearls, embedding them atop Life Achanuan's countless towering peaks, allowing them to shine eternally. I will regard sages as rare, fragrant celestial herbs, planting them amidst the picturesque mountains and rivers, in the fertile fields of the 1,000-year world, 10,000-year world, and the Elysium world, enabling them to enjoy the eternal joy of life. I wish for the members of Life Achanuan to sprint forward, swiftly attaining the qualities of sages. Without pause or hesitation, they shall continue their journey toward the highest realm of life, sainthood, and ultimately reach the Celestial Islands continent. Amen. Run bare-bottomed when your life is on the line. Xie Feng. I usually start work at 8:30 a.m. However, 2 days ago, on January 6, 2005, I had an appointment with a friend who asked for my help with a small task at the bank. We agreed to meet at 8 a.m. at the bank's entrance. At 7:40 a.m., my friend called to remind me not to forget the appointment. He asked, "Are you still in bed?" Still groggy, I replied, "Yes." I arrived at the bank at exactly 8 a.m., but my friend didn't turn up until 8:15. I asked why he was late, and he explained that he hadn't expected me to be on time. Based on his reasoning, since I got out of bed at 7:40, I'd still need time to wash, eat, get ready, and account for at least 10 minutes of travel time. In his estimation, it was impossible for me to make it by 8 o'clock. My friend, a meticulous and methodical company manager, based his estimate on conventional reasoning, which seemed perfectly logical. The problem is that conventional thinking can't account for unconventional actions. For instance, when pressed for time, I might skip breakfast. In extreme situations, I might forego washing up. And if it were a matter of life and death, I wouldn't hesitate to bolt out the door, stark naked if necessary. Recently, while watching CNN, I saw footage of people frantically running during the Indian Ocean tsunami. Why were they running like mad? Because their lives were at stake. In such critical moments, there's no room for hesitation. Every second counts, and even if you're stark naked, you must run. A moment's delay to tidy up, shine your shoes, or open a box to grab some cash could mean the difference between life and death. Sometimes, survival hinges on how effectively you use a single minute. Now, imagine if someone knew about the tsunami 9 hours in advance and tried to warn the people on the shore, run quickly. A tsunami is coming. Would they believe it? Would they heed the warning? 98% of them probably wouldn't. Some might think, this guy must be crazy. Others might dismiss him as a jealous troublemaker, envious of their seaside enjoyment. Hotel owners might accuse him of stirring up trouble to hurt their business. Or maybe someone would call 110, China's emergency number, and say, there's someone here spreading panic, creating chaos, and disrupting order. Please send someone to take him away. Now, let's suppose someone knew a tsunami was coming half an hour in advance and shouted desperately, "Run! A tsunami is coming." Think about it, how would people react? Or suppose the rumble of the approaching wave could faintly be heard, or its towering form just barely seen. How many people would drop everything and run, bare-bottomed, without looking back? Now let's take it further. Suppose a cataclysmic tsunami, one not seen in 5,000 years, were to strike the earth around 2013. If someone, frantic with urgency, shouted to the masses, "The tsunami is coming. Run," would they believe it? Would they act? Would they run bare-bottomed? Could they abandon their gold and silver treasures? Could they walk away from their cozy homes, their hard-earned status, and their power? Could they part with their spouses, concubines, and loved ones? Here's a brief anecdote. As I was writing this, a friend came to visit. I discussed the topic with him, asking, "What would you do if a great tsunami were to hit around 2013? He replied without hesitation, "I'd take it one day at a time. If I die, I won't die alone. So many people will die, what's there to fear? Besides, if science can't predict it, who can? Even if I wanted to escape, where would I go?" I said, "Think of it as a game of hide-and-seek. Suppose someone had the foresight to know where safety lies. Would you listen to them?" Noah prepared for 40 years before the flood. The moment the ark's door closed, torrential rains poured down. Why not learn from Noah? He replied, "Building an ark requires money. Without money, how can you build one?" I countered, "Let's assume you don't need money to join the ark, and it's already nearly complete. All you need is to prepare yourself mentally and spiritually to enter. Would you step aboard?" He brushed it off as pure nonsense and a figment of imagination. "I believe in reality, not illusions," he said. I said, "Fair enough. Hold on to your reality then. Like playing music to a cow." Dear readers, what is reality? Is yesterday reality? Is tomorrow reality? I believe reality is this: when your life is on the line, don't hesitate, just run, even bare-bottomed. Do what should be done, avoid what shouldn't. Xie Feng. Every time I step into the shower, I hear the sound of mice scurrying across the ceiling. On several occasions, I've even heard the squeaking of baby mice, confirming that a pair of mice have settled down to raise a large family, enjoying their domestic bliss. Ideally, I should find a way to drive them out, but considering that their mischief is limited to stealing dog food and that they haven't caused other troubles, I've taken no action so far and let them roam freely. However, I have issued a warning. You must know what to do and what not to do. Nature has granted you survival skills and the means to live. You have the right to exist, and I cannot deprive you of that. But there is a principle: you can build a nest on my ceiling, raise your young, and even make some noise at times. I won't hold you accountable for that. But if you overbreed, dig holes everywhere, and damage my home, I will take measures. Either I'll get a cat or lay poison everywhere. The choice is yours. The mice may have sensed this warning, or perhaps they are completely oblivious to my intentions. Regardless, if they act within bounds, they can survive safely, but the moment they grow reckless, disaster will befall them. If we compare my attitude toward the mice to that of the greatest creator's attitude toward humanity, this analogy could serve as a cautionary tale. Humanity must remain vigilant, knowing what should and should not be done. If we act recklessly and indulge our desires, who knows when a cat or poisons might suddenly appear? Could the Indian Ocean tsunami have been such a cat? Humanity as a whole must act with restraint, and so must each individual. Yuan Shikai, who disregarded moral bounds, was reviled for generations, while George Washington, who exercised restraint, was celebrated for centuries. Good fortune should not be enjoyed alone, power should not be monopolized, benefits should not be hoarded, and the world should not be ruled by one person alone. Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of a unified China, achieved greatness but failed to exercise restraint. His infamous burning of books and burying of scholars alive earned him the scorn of intellectuals for millennia. Heaven has its own scales of justice. No matter how ignorant or unaware a person may be, their heart holds its own measure. One may enjoy temporary success, but it is impossible to fool people forever. We may deceive others in some matters but not in all. Whether president or shepherd, everyone must know what to do and what not to do. We may escape human punishment, but we cannot escape the laws of the Tao. Those with power, those who have opportunities to benefit themselves, those basking in glory and praise, and those who secretly mock others for their ignorance must all learn to stop at the right point and exercise restraint. As members of Life Echanuan, we especially must know what to do and what not to do. We must act as if walking a tightrope or treading on thin ice. For things we don't understand, we should stay silent, not out of indifference, but out of caution. It's okay if we don't produce masterpieces, as long as we don't create garbage. It's okay if we can't maintain peace and harmony, as long as we don't cause chaos. It's okay if we can't help others, as long as we don't harm them. Life Echanuan itself must also have its boundaries. As humanity's spiritual and emotional sanctuary, it must focus on matters of the spirit and soul. In areas like politics, administration, markets, and systems, we should remain uninvolved. In these fields, we are amateurs, ignorant and unqualified. Even if we have some knowledge, we cannot monopolize every good cause. We must leave vast spaces for others to thrive and shine. All things in the world must operate within limits. The earth can only orbit obediently within the range of gravitational forces. Should it deviate from its path, it would cease to exist. Be it tigers and leopards, gazelles and elephants, mice and cockroaches, or sparrows and insects, all can only operate within certain boundaries. Exceed those boundaries, and disaster is inevitable. Humans cannot conquer heaven, they can only align with it. Humans cannot reject heaven, they can only follow it. Though I know little of politics, the teachings of saints have revealed that a great leader governs by adapting to circumstances and going with the flow. The great controlled floods not by blocking them but by channeling the water. A reservoir must have a spillway to ensure the long-term safety of its dam. Confucius said, "At 50, I understood the will of heaven." I am not far from 50, yet I have not yet grasped the will of heaven. What I do understand, however, is that to become a sage, one must know what to do and what not to do. Material thinking. Xiefeng. Preface. Life is a non-material structure imbued with spirituality. This is the essential characteristic that distinguishes life from non-life. When we examine the myriad life forms in the vast universe, we discover that the fundamental difference between various life forms lies in their genetic structures. The type of genetic structure determines the form of life. All humans, in terms of physical form, belong to the same species and share no significant differences. However, when we delve into the realm of thought, we uncover stark distinctions among individuals. Humans can be categorized into heavenly beings, divine beings, celestial beings, true beings, perfected beings, sages, mortals, worldly people, and ignorant people. Classifying humans based solely on conceptual categories holds little significance. However, when we focus on the evolution of life, we uncover a profound mystery, the essence of reincarnation and transformation. Understanding this essence allows one's life to enter the Tao. Once on the Tao, we can rise above the dense fog of confusion and progress toward higher dimensions of life, rather than remaining stagnant or regressing to lower realms. This is the purpose of distinguishing among different categories of people. By classifying individuals into heavenly beings, divine beings, celestial beings, true beings, ultimate beings, sages, mortals, worldly people, and ignorant people, we can clearly observe the trajectory of life's evolution and the direction for self-improvement and cultivation. For instance, if you are a mortal, your life's goal should at least be to aspire to become a sage rather than conforming to worldly people. Similarly, if you are a sage, you should aim to progress toward becoming a saint, a divine, celestial, true, or ultimate being, rather than sliding backward. So, what is the fundamental difference among these different categories of people? The answer lies in their thinking. The way one thinks determines one's form of existence. Taiji Celestial. How many types of thinking exist among humans? The variations are countless, diverse, and intricate. However, when categorized systematically, human thinking can be grouped into 8 major types. Material thinking. Image thinking. Associative thinking. Illusory thinking. Visualized thinking. Taiji thinking. Formless thinking. Holographic thinking. To guide those who revere the greatest creator, respect gods and Buddhas, honor life, and revere nature into heaven, the 1,000-year world, the 10,000-year world, and the Elysium world, I have provided a concise introduction to these 8 types of thinking in articles 73 to 80 of the Revelation chapter. These explanations serve to dispel confusion and help individuals attain enlightenment swiftly. Material thinking. Material thinking is a mode of reasoning based on the superficial phenomena of nature and human society. It evaluates life's value and determines actions without considering the deeper causal relationships behind appearances. This mode of thinking disregards the underlying reasons for observable phenomena. As such, it is also known as superficial thinking, intuitive thinking, linear thinking, one-dimensional thinking, instinctual thinking, or 1 + 1 = 2 thinking. This type of thinking is characteristic of animals and ignorant people, and it is also the predominant mode of thinking among most worldly people. Let us first examine some specific manifestations of material thinking before analyzing it further. Manifestation 1: Pessimism, disappointment, anxiety, complaining, jealousy. People with material thinking are preoccupied with eating, drinking, playing, entertainment, building homes, seeking fame, accumulating wealth, and gaining power, constantly striving to outdo others. However, these desires are insatiable, leading to perpetual pessimism, disappointment, anxiety, complaining, and jealousy. Their entire lives are spent in a dazed struggle, much like dumplings boiling in a pot, constantly tumbling but never contemplating the deeper meaning behind the surface phenomena. Manifestation 2: Stealing, cheating, robbing, defrauding, swindling, deceiving, abducting, bullying, oppressing, raping, killing. To satisfy their base physiological desires without being willing to earn through legitimate labor, or due to the unfair distribution mechanisms in society, such individuals resort to stealing, cheating, robbing, defrauding, swindling, deceiving, abducting, bullying, oppressing, raping, and killing. This reflects the law of the jungle in the animal world. They seldom, if ever, consider the catastrophic consequences of their actions on their own future lives. Manifestation 3: Inciting, instigating, attacking, plundering, occupying, rioting, waging war. When their desires become too overwhelming, and deception, theft, and coercion seem inadequate or too minor in scale, what do? How do they seize what belongs to others? They manipulate others through false morality, false justice, and false democracy to incite and instigate unrest. They resort to violence, taking advantage of chaos to further their own interests. Some even mobilize entire nations to expand outward, seizing others' lands and plundering their wealth, regardless of the suffering inflicted on others. The extreme manifestations of material thinking are primarily reflected in these 3 aspects. Why do such individuals act this way? In their previous lives, they had just transitioned from the animal world and had not received timely civilizing education. Instinctual animal behaviors remain deeply embedded in their genes, making such actions seem natural to them. Having observed the animal kingdom and understood human history, they internalize the principles of evolution, leading them to conclude that humans are meant to exploit one another, every man for himself, victory belongs to the strong, and the survival of the fittest. They believe life is about amassing wealth and power, while everything else is secondary. Physically strong but intellectually simple, they perceive only the tangible material world. Concepts like the greatest creator, gods, Buddhas, and karmic retribution seem to them like myths and superstitions. They are staunch atheists, rigid materialists, and unwavering utilitarians. The material world, as it appears, is their sole reality. Their way of thinking shapes their psychological activities and behavioral patterns, directly determining their worldview and approach to life. Despite their simplicity, their destructiveness to human society is immense. They pose a great threat to civilized societies and are the primary cause of human suffering. The only solution is education. Humanity's foremost task should be to educate those with material thinking. Without addressing this issue, humanity will never experience true peace and happiness and will always face the potential risk of self-destruction. As for these individuals themselves, they will never find true happiness. More importantly, their lives cannot ascend, they can only descend to lower realms and endure the consequences of their own actions. It must be said that people with material thinking are the most pitiable and deserving of sympathy, yet they are also the most stubborn and dangerous. It is crucial to recognize that such individuals are not only found among the uneducated or the working class but also among scholars, professors, scientists, political leaders, and the wealthy. The real challenge lies in educating them. In conclusion, material thinking is the simplest and most practical form of thinking, but it is also the lowest and most primitive form of human thinking. Image thinking. Xiefeng. Image thinking refers to the process of transforming the appearance of the material world, or a tangible entity, into a pattern, symbol, melody, language, gesture, expression, or sound. For example, activities such as sketching, painting, photography, copying, rubbing, and sculpture express physical objects through patterns. These are all forms of image thinking. Similarly, cartography, whether it be maps, transistor circuit diagrams, architectural blueprints, process flowcharts, mechanical construction diagrams, assembly schematics, meridian charts, simplified musical notation, or staff notation, transforms physical entities into symbols, which is also an application of image thinking. Musical pieces such as A Moonlit Night on the Spring River, The Moon Reflected in Urquin, and the violin concerto Butterfly Lovers express the stories of nature and human experiences through melodies rich in emotional highs and lows, achieving a profound spiritual impact. This, too, belongs to image thinking. The development and evolution of the Chinese language is a result of image thinking. Our writing system began with pictographs, where visual symbols represented physical objects. Even today, characters like moon, mountain, stone, field, and water still retain traces of their original pictorial forms. When reading classic literary works such as Romance of the Three Kingdoms, Water Margin, Journey to the West, A Dream of Red Mansions, and Investiture of the Gods, we can vividly see the characters come to life, as if they are standing before us. This is a result of the author's image thinking, through which real people are transformed into literary figures. The 5 Animal Frolics exercise, created by the renowned physician Hua Tuo to enhance physical health, elevates the imitation of animal movements into a series of postures and gestures, another manifestation of image thinking. Theatrical performances, whether by Shakespeare or Lao Shi, rely on actors whose expressions and costumes are not genuine reflections of their personal emotions. Instead, the actors serve as vessels for their characters, vividly expressing their joy, anger, love, sorrow, and longing. This is yet another form of image thinking. Similarly, imitating dragon roars, tiger growls, frog croaks, dog barks, human shouts, horse neighs, insect chirps, and wolf howls also falls under image thinking. Image thinking is a cognitive process in which physical entities are represented by images to achieve a corresponding effect. For example, sending a photograph to a distant loved one provides comfort, even though the sender is not physically present. The landscapes and figures on a television screen are mere projections, yet their impact is nearly indistinguishable from that of real images. When watching television, we experience emotions, excitement, joy, anger, sorrow, anxiety, laughter, crying, shouting, because of how the images unfold before us. This is the effect of image thinking. Materialistic thinking, on the other hand, is direct, one-dimensional, and instinct-driven. 1 is 1, 2 is 2. It operates on basic impulses. When the wind blows, tree branches sway, this signals the arrival of cold, so one puts on a cotton coat. Hunger strikes, so one searches for food. Desire arises, so one takes action. There is little need for conscious thought, it is simply, I have no choice but to do this. Their daily actions are mechanical, passive, and obligatory, often accompanied by self-loathing, aversion, or a sense of resignation. They remain confined within a limited space or domain, repeating the same tasks daily, even for a lifetime, much like their ancestors, without creativity, independence, or autonomy. However, those who engage in image thinking are different. They use their minds actively. Their thought process is not I have no choice but to do this, but rather I choose to do this. They transcend the physical world and enter the realm of spirit, breaking free from the constraints of time and space. They transform fleeting moments, phenomena, or events into something relatively eternal, thus leading a freer existence than those governed solely by materialistic thinking. It can be said that artistic creation is a process of image thinking. Painting, composing music, cartography, photography, acting, and literary writing all fall within its scope. Image elements transcend reality, the mundane, time and space, and even personal worries. They have a profound effect on the human spirit, elevating one's state of mind. For instance, young fans who decorate their rooms with large posters of their idols experience a form of emotional and spiritual regulation. Similarly, when we internalize Life-Chanuen as our spiritual and emotional home, we can free ourselves from the suffering and burdens caused by worldly attachments, thus achieving a higher level of spiritual refinement. This is the transformative effect of elevating one's mode of thinking. It directly influences our lives and our very existence. Associative thinking. Xiefeng. Associative thinking refers to the mental process of grasping a natural phenomenon and then using it as a springboard to make further connections, drawing parallels, and linking together other related factors. A classic example of associative thinking is Newton, Apple, universal gravitation. Newton observed the common natural phenomenon of an apple falling to the ground, which led him to the concept of gravity. He then extended this concept to include mass, speed, space, and other factors, ultimately deriving the three laws of motion. This is associative thinking. For example, the whirlpool phenomenon that often occurs when draining water from a bathtub can lead one to think of the movement direction of Earth's magnetic field lines. The spiral ascent of a bean vine can remind one of the movement of celestial bodies. The natural observation of wood floating and iron sinking on water can be connected to the concept of buoyancy, which then leads to the shipbuilding industry. Observing the discontinuity of an object's motion might lead to associations with quantum mechanics. The relationship between motion, mass, and gravity can be linked to spacetime curvature. The role of consciousness can lead one to think of the holographic nature of the universe, and so on. All of these examples are manifestations of associative thinking. A skilled detective can infer a suspect's character traits, motivations, and whereabouts from a few clues. A qualified forensic expert can deduce a criminal's physical features, appearance, and even their clothing style from the victim's wounds and facial expressions. A seasoned traditional Chinese medicine doctor can link a patient's complexion to internal organ health. A master of face reading, Mian Xiang, can infer a person's past actions and future fortunes from their facial features. A feng shui master can assess a person's living environment based on their handwriting and habitual movements. A skilled politician can sense the rise and fall of dynasties or the coming of a new era based on public psychological behavior. An economist might predict fluctuations in the stock market or the economic trajectory of a country based on a single event. A sociologist could infer the loss of a nation's values and morals from the prevalence of issues like prostitution, drug use, and organized crime. Even a fashion designer can predict future trends in clothing based on street fashion and the pace of people's movements. Associative thinking is primary, inventive, pioneering, and unique. It is a form of divergent thinking. Many people may appear to engage in associative thinking, but in reality, they are merely applying knowledge or accumulated experience from others. For example, many farmers can predict the cycle of farming based on the changing seasons, spring sowing, summer growing, autumn harvesting, winter storing, but this is not the result of their associative thinking. Instead, it is a reflection of accumulated experience in their awareness. Many people can connect the pain of arthritis to changes in the weather, but this, too, is the result of knowledge and experience, not associative thinking. Similarly, many businesspeople can predict which goods to buy and sell based on regional, temporal, and seasonal differences, but this is again the result of experience, except in rare cases. In professions like engineering, technical work, and scholarly research, it might seem like associative thinking is at play, but in reality, they are simply applying the knowledge learned in school or accumulated through experience. For example, Newton's association of a falling apple with the law of universal gravitation is the result of associative thinking. However, if a college student claims that he can associate a falling apple with the law of universal gravitation, he is merely recounting the knowledge he has learned rather than demonstrating his own associative thinking, unless he had never heard of Newton or the concept of gravity before. Strictly speaking, only thought processes that lead to new discoveries, inventions, creations, or theories qualify as associative thinking. From this perspective, those who truly possess associative thinking abilities include scientists, inventors, forensic experts, traditional Chinese medicine practitioners, face readers, feng shui masters, outstanding politicians, and military strategists. Engineers and technicians who develop new products can also be loosely included in this category. The slow but steady progress of human civilization is primarily driven by individuals with associative thinking abilities. Without them, modern civilization as we know it would not exist. Material thinking is a form of fixed thinking, whereas associative thinking is divergent thinking. It breaks through the limitations of material thinking, surpasses the imitation and replication of image thinking, and directly extends its reach into the unknown. This leads to new discoveries, inventions, and paths forward. However, associative thinking is still far from unlocking the ultimate mysteries of the universe. I have realized this from studying the thinking of great scientists such as Newton, Einstein, Planck, and Hawking, as well as from observing their attempts to establish a unified field theory of the universe. For humanity as a whole, I hope that more people will develop associative thinking abilities. To illustrate the difference, to transport 6 tons of cargo from point A to point B, which is 800 kilometers away, a person with associative thinking will simply use a heavy-duty truck and complete the task alone in one day. In contrast, someone relying solely on material thinking, even if they can carry 50 kilograms and walk 100 kilometers per day, would require 120 people and 8 days to accomplish the same task, a waste of effort with inferior results. Meanwhile, someone limited to image thinking would not even be able to conceive of a solution. From an artistic perspective, image thinkers are more remarkable than material thinkers, but from a practical perspective, when hungry, a real bun will satisfy hunger, while a picture of a bun, no matter how lifelike, cannot solve the problem. For Life Genuine members, I hope that your thinking will not be confined to associative thinking alone, as it is still a lower-level form of thinking. It is like the challenge of transmitting information across the Atlantic. A material thinker would build a ship to transport messages. An image thinker would lay underwater cables. An associative thinker would use radio waves. And we would. Illusory thinking. Xiefeng. Imagine yourself in the middle of a vast desert. The sky is a dull gray, and there are no reference points in sight, no compass, no GPS, nothing to guide you. Do you think you can find your way out? You cannot. You might scoff at me and say, "Nonsense. As long as I keep walking forward, step by step with determination, I will surely make my way out." Yes, theoretically and logically speaking, you should be able to escape the desert. After all, each step you take is forward. How could you possibly fail to walk out? Unfortunately, reality does not align with theory. Despite every step being correct and taken in a forward direction, you will ultimately end up right back where you started. Note, this is not about walking around the earth in a complete circle but rather about being lost within the desert itself. Why is it that you cannot walk out of the desert? From a scientific perspective, if one of your feet is even slightly larger than the other, or if one leg is just a little longer than the other, the tiny discrepancies over millions of steps will accumulate, leading to a huge deviation in your final destination. Though you feel as if you are walking in a straight line, you are actually moving along a curve. Eventually, you will return to your starting point. Science offers a valid explanation, yet it remains a theoretical deduction and logical reasoning. It is not the true cause. The real reason lies in what I call illusory thinking. It is common knowledge that water flows downward. However, illusory thinking can make water return to where it started. I once saw a paradoxical image in Reader's Digest, a fascinating illusion of flowing water. The image depicted a small waterfall with water cascading downward. Yet, somehow, the water eventually flowed back to the top of the waterfall. The visual presented no apparent flaws, nor did the logic seem questionable, yet the water ultimately returned to its starting point. Strange, isn't it? This is the power of illusory thinking. There is an old folk saying, "Cut down the millet bundles, and you'll stir up the wandering spirits." This refers to a peculiar phenomenon. Every year during the millet harvest, farmers gather the crops into bundles. However, for about half a month to a month after the harvesting begins, people frequently get lost when venturing out at night. Strangely, even in places they are intimately familiar with, on paths they have walked countless times, they still lose their way. Some wander in circles all night until the rooster crows or they hear human voices, only then do they suddenly snap out of their confusion and find their way home. It truly seems as if the wandering spirits have been angered and have clouded their vision. What causes this? The prevailing theory suggests that certain molecules, or scents, released into the air after the millet is harvested have a narcotic effect on the nervous system, inducing a state of illusory thinking. So, what exactly is illusory thinking? Answer: illusory thinking occurs when the nervous system is numbed by a certain substance or non-material, creating illusions and hallucinations that lead to a distorted perception of reality. This altered state of mind is what we call illusory thinking. Once someone falls into illusory thinking, an outside observer might see them as trapped in an illusion, but from their own perspective, they feel intelligent and rational. They firmly believe that every step they take is correct. Whether analyzed theoretically or deduced logically, there appears to be no issue. Yet, in the end, their conclusions are absurd and completely contrary to their original intentions. Illusory thinking is like a maze, a trap of the mind. In ancient times, some military strategists trained in Taoist arts could set up bewildering formations that induced illusory thinking. Once a person entered, their mind would become disoriented, making it nearly impossible to find a way out. Step by step, everything seems correct, but the result is wrong. Always right yet forever lost. This is illusory thinking. From a macro perspective, all of humanity exists within a grand illusion. Everyone is trapped in illusory thinking, though they are unaware of it. The first article of the chapter of Revelation is titled, "The 36 trigrams arrays that are hard to break and impossible to solve." We believe humanity is making progress, don't we? Yet, in the end, we will return to where we started, unless someone without illusory thinking leads the way. Otherwise, we will never escape the desert. Let me give you an example. Most people have probably never heard of Seth and Oren. Their entire body of work is a classic example of illusory thinking. In the 1960s, a New Age philosophy emerged in the United States, with Seth's teachings at its core. In China, this philosophy is represented by the New Age Forum. Recently, an article titled Beyond Time and Space, The Eternal Soul, was published on the Life Changyuan website, exemplifying this ideology.